So to say that when on the surface is not even being accurate, it would like the spray of the ocean. We didn't even touch the ocean. It's the spray that comes off because it's an infinite. Okay. And then if we go deep further, we say, okay, now that you studied the Talmud, what did the Talmud teach you? To rephrase it in more Hasidic terms. You're studying the Talmud because you want to get closer to God. Do you feel God's closeness? Well, I didn't do enough contemplation. I didn't do enough meditation. I didn't do enough. The bottom line is whatever we do is limited. When you give tzedakah, that's your soul. You remember we spoke about this last week, that there's a difference between a person who loves life and a person who's fighting for his life. Why is he fighting for his life? Because he loves life. But it's a big difference whether you're jogging because you love life or you're running away from a guy who's pursuing you with a knife. You're both jogging, right? It's different because this is coming from your very kishka. This is coming from your intestines. It's coming from your very essence. I want to live. That's called pneumius. That's called the inwardness. So a touch of that inwardness is found in your paycheck. It's found in your Social Security check. It's found in your investment of time in helping a Jew. That's you. That's the real you. That's everything of you. When you do that for Hashem, and we loosely call it tzedakah, acts of righteousness, or acts of charity, then Hashem does the same. He opens up, as if to say, a window or a funnel where his holiness, where his presence shines inside of you. And now when you study Torah, it will have a much more powerful effect because the chitzonius, which is coming from external, coming from your mind, is, so to speak, has been primed by the pneumius. This idea is one of the reasons why we give tzedakah before charity. Tzedakah before prayer. There's in every shul, no matter what kind of a shul, there's a charity box. Sometimes they actually go around with it. Otherwise, it's just on the table. Everyone is it's a reminder to give some tzedakah before davening. Now, there are many reasons for this. There's no question that there's more than one reason. But let's say you're a big supporter. You write big checks to the center. So what's going to help if you put a coin? How does that help the center? It doesn't need your coin. You're already supporting the center. The point of it is, it's not for the center, it's for you. Before you daven, you want to connect to God. You want to talk to God. You want to feel his presence as much as you can. And depending on how deeply involved we are in spiritual pursuits, that's how we're going to feel. So if we spend most of our day and night involved with ourselves, it's suddenly very hard to say that we're feeling Hashem's presence and now we're talking to him face to face. But when you give tzedakah, there's part of your life is in that coin. Might be a small part of it, but it is a breath of life that it took to receive that coin or that bill or whatever it might be. When you do that, you're now opening yourself up. You're giving your inner part to Hashem. Now when you daven, or if you study Torah afterwards, the mitzvah, even though it's taking place from the exterior of you, it's already been so to speak, became softened, it became malleable, it became, I use the word primed, it was actually prepared through the mitzvah of tzedakah. This concept, I have to tell you, our Rebbe, who's the Rebbe of this generation in particular, emphasized to no end. You'll always give tzedakah. It's good to give tzedakah before doing any mitzvah, before davening, before learning, before why? Based primarily on this teaching that the best we're going to do is superficial. And even in superficial, many of us don't have the concentration and self-discipline necessary to really direct our heart and soul to a divine activity. But giving tzedakah in many ways is easy. It's just a coin in a charity box. Or for that matter, I always talk about the money because that's primarily tzedakah, but it's not limited to that. So the tzedakah, of course, is by smiling at a person, helping a person, the chesed, the kindness of a human being towards another human being. That means you're involved. Okay. So this is what he calls, and the line that we just read, I'm going to repeat, because it's emphasizing something that he said earlier and that we had an occasion to talk about over and over. Ki ein haponim ha'elyonim me'irim lamata. God's face, or to put it differently, more correctly, the ein haponim ha'elyonim, the inwardness of the spiritual world will not shine lamata, below, ela b'sreusa de lasata, only with an awakening of below, but ma'aseh hatzdaka hanikra shalom, with an act of tzedakah, which is called shalom. If we took this to a select few, let's say there's a yeshiva boy. He basically has no money. He's in a dormitory. He's not making money, and many of them don't even have coins. Where's his shalom? So first of all, if you take a look at Chabad rabbis, the Chabad kids, you'll see a lot of them, it's interesting, they walk around with a small pushka. It's in their talis and tefillin, or they're not married, so it's in their tefillin bag. They have a small pushka with a roll of nickels, so they could always give tzedakah, because most of them are not working, they're in yeshiva, and they want to do the mitzvah of tzedakah. So in a whole month, it might be $3, but every time before davening, you give tzedakah. But there's another form of tzedakah. If they want to see success in their study of Torah in an inward way, and again, I have to remind you, Torah is the concept of Torah. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, I'll say it again, very famous, where someone said to a very great Torah scholar, I mastered the Talmud. And of course, this great Torah scholar was pious and humble, and he said, that's wonderful, but did the Talmud master you? When we study Talmud, which is really a very intellectual exercise, it's actually not an intellectual exercise, it's a spiritual exercise using the brain as a medium. As we would say, davening is a spiritual exercise using the heart. So after you study, what is the effect? If a guy comes out of a shower dirty, he says, I took a shower, and you say, well, it doesn't look like the shower had much of an effect on you. You don't smell good, and there's still dirt. When you study Torah, especially if you study Torah intensively, it has to change a person. So if a yeshiva student, stops and helps a student, a colleague, a younger kid to study Torah, what he's really doing is actually an act of tzedakah. Right? He's doing an act of kindness. So tzedakah doesn't only mean the coin. Tzedakah basically means the investment of time and soul to help someone else. When you do that, you start your spiritual call to God with an act of pnimius, with an act of inwardness, something very deep and internal. You're revealing for Hashem, then Hashem responds in kind. And that's why tzedakah is good for every mitzvah before every mitzvah. Before you put up a mezuzah at home, you don't have to, there's no such law, but it doesn't hurt to put something into a tzedakah pushka. The Rebbe was a big fan of this concept of constantly giving tzedakah, partially because of what the Tanya says, each mitzvah is a connection, but the connection is in terms of us feeling the connection, and maybe us being affected by this connection. Tzedakah before a mitzvah allows the connection to be felt and to permeate the body. Continuing in the Tanya, this is the reason why shenikra tzedakah shalom. Now we can also understand why one of the terms in which tzedakah, righteousness or charity, is another term that's used is shalom, peace. So when he just quoted the verse Pada v'shalom nafshi, that King David says Hashem has redeemed my soul with peace, we could also read that nafshi, my soul, when is my soul, so to speak, apparent or dominant? When is my soul dominant? When it's bishalom, when it's with peace, when it's with tzedakah. Why is tzedakah shalom? The word, we use the word shalom as peace. And they always make jokes. In Israel, you never know. Guy says shalom. Is he saying hello or is he saying goodbye? Of course, it's used in both ways. But the word shalom basically means complete. Shalom means complete. And it makes sense that peace is connected to completeness. So tzedakah is called shalom, not only peace, but completeness. Lefi shenasa shalom ben Yisrael lavim shebeshamayim. Because it makes a wholesomeness, a completeness between Israel and their Father in heaven. And we'll end with this, K'mayim Razal, as the sages have told us, when they redeem their soul, Hem Chelek Hashem Mamish, they become literally a part of Hashem, Midei Hachisenim, from the hands of the external. We'll continue with this next week. I'm going to tell you a children's story I just remembered, studying with you. And I remember, I read it in a book called Gallup Melodies. This is, if I remember correctly, this is the way the story goes. There was once a prince who was banished from the palace because he acted inappropriately. And he wandered along, and over time, he began to look like a serf. He began to look like a poor fellow. His beautiful clothes were in tatters, and he had to beg for food. And the humiliation for him was awesome. Not only didn't he have a respectable place to live, but he remembered he's a prince, and his father was so disappointed with him as being a prince, he banished him from the palace. So I remember the story. It was beautiful from Gallup Melodies. One day he's walking, and someone gave him a roll. And for him, this was a big treat. And he's about to eat the roll when he hears cries of help. He picks up his eyes and he notices that behind the fence, there's a girl and there's a bull that's making all kinds of threatening gestures to her. And she's so frightened, and her fright seems to be enraging the bull. And the bull begins to take a couple of steps, and she begins to run. And it's not going to be a happy ending. What does he do? He runs over, jumps over the fence, takes the girl over the fence, and now he's looking at the bull, and the bull is not happy. And what he does is he takes his roll and he throws it on the floor, and the bull for a moment is distracted and starts sniffing it and trying to eat it, and that gave him enough time to jump over the fence. When he jumps over the fence, he fell hard on the ground, and the first thought that hit him was he's hungry, he's hurt, but it was worth it. And at that moment, he hears his father's voice. You are a prince. There is nobility in you. I'm going to bring you home. I remember that story as a kid. It's a made-up story, but it's a beautiful concept. When we give tzedakah, what we're really showing is that someone else's need or a community's need is not only as important as ours, but in many ways even more important. And it doesn't make a difference how much you give. It's the concept. So many people, it's the concept. And that's what he says. Pada v'shalom nafshi, every time you do this act of tzedakah, you're actually redeeming your soul from the externals. This is the end of today's class with Tanya. But let me just now talk to you in general. In Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, we never stop talking about tzedakah. I'm just wondering, truly wondering, and I don't know, but I have a very strong suspicion. Someone who doesn't grow up with these words, charity, 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 how often do they give charity? It's really, Maris, how many times a day do they think of doing an act of kindness? And not to their family, but to a stranger. Some people, see the homeless and they'll give something to the homeless. Others will say, don't give to the homeless. It's not good for society and it's not good for the homeless. So when do they give tzedakah? And the answer is when there's a tragedy, when there's a tsunami, when there's an earthquake, when CNN reports a tragedy, and the American Red Cross says there's, occasionally there are these moments where if you're a decent human being, you want to help. But it's not seen as a constant daily exercise in being kind / being open to someone else's need. And it's not because people are bad. They just don't think in those terms. You go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, you play with the kids, you watch the news, whatever it might be. I mean, you're a nice, decent human being. What more can you ask for? And the answer is what you could ask for is to be a decent, not only human being, but a decent spiritual being. And to become a spiritual being doesn't mean you have to go to India and meditate on a mountain. A spiritual being means that there's a world beyond you. There are people that are outside of your circle. And when you reach out to help, to assist, to show concern, then you are actually revealing a noble part of what a human being is capable of. There might be exceptions to the rule, but in the animal world, by and large, if there's what we would call chesed, it's to a species. Maybe in the lions, maybe in the antelopes, maybe in the dog world, they show kindness, if you could call that, to its own species. But they don't take care of rats. They're not concerned. Human beings are concerned about people who are very much not like them. Our Holy Rebbe insisted that what the world needs is not only Jewish people to give charity, that every single person should basically be concerned for the betterment of others. And what we call a charity box, he often said, why shouldn't there be that in every home? And it doesn't make a difference if it's going to a school, to a hospital, to an old age home, to American Red Cross, to the Boy Scouts. It doesn't really make a difference to who. The point of it is that there's more in your house and more in your world than yourself. When you take a look at, this world of deceit, there's an acknowledgement for acts of philanthropy, but usually it's always when it has 6 or 7 zeros, which is, I suppose, okay, but it's not the chesed, which is daily. No one gives $100 million to a hospital every single day. but people can volunteer, if not every day, once a month. People can give charity to this hospital, whether it be every day, many times a day, or for their school or whatever. The idea of tzedakah is a very, very necessary ingredient, not only to create a functioning society, but most importantly, to create spiritual beings. We are not animals, including all people from all faiths and all. We are not animals, we are human beings. And to reveal the humanity, it's not by creating an air conditioner, which is a great accomplishment. It's you reveal humanity / spirituality by doing a simple act of kindness, like giving someone who's cold a sweater. That is much more human than a person who creates the atom bomb. Okay, anyway, without a doubt, when Mashiach will come, this lesson will be practiced not only by governments, and those of us that are American citizens should be very proud of America as a rule, as a general rule. It is a kind government. It has given billions of dollars to other nations that were suffering drought or whatever it might be. And without being political, the government cares about the poor in America. It's I don't know if they have that in Uganda. I don't know if they even have that in Bulgaria. It's a fundamentally being kind, being compassionate is the greatest quality that we could hope for. When Mashiach will come, there will be a world of peace, because the have and the have-nots will see themselves as a partnership. The have will see the have-nots as an opportunity for them to be good. Okay, anyway, let me wish you all a very wonderful Shabbos. Please read your email. We have some very special events coming up. Shavuos is a week from Monday, I believe. We have all night learning, and we also have Monday, a fantastic dairy lunch. Those of you that are coming, please let us know, because we want to have a better sense of how many people are coming. Okay, good Shabbos, everyone. Thank you very much for joining.
Good Shabbos.
You're welcome.